The topic under discussion today is how to provide food security. Now, this is based on an article that has come in the Times of India on the 19th of September 2011 and is by Mr. Arun Firodia, who is the chairman of the Kennedy Group. Now, what is the state of food inflation today? It is accelerated to 9.78% on a year-on-year basis. And what is the RBI doing to combat this food inflation? In the past 18 months, they have raised the interest rate 12 times. But this is not the way to do things. Let us look at two aspects of the economy, namely the demand side and the supply side. So if the demand faces an increase, the supply should also be bought on par with the demand. In this context, we have to increase the production of food through a multi-pronged strategy of sorts. Now, firstly, what ails agriculture? See, you cannot blame the shortage of food crops on a rising population. This is because a rise in population is only partially responsible. So we have to consequently increase the production of food crops even more. Also, we can't blame it on exports. The recent news being the export of onions. Because we have exported such a large quantity of onions to other foreign nations, we cannot say that our food faced a scarcity. Now, a very important concept and the whole reason for food scarcity being there in the first place is the middlemen. So in the 1950s, namely 1951 and 52, 89% of what the consumer paid the farmer actually reached the farmer. But today, in today's scenario, hardly 34% of it reaches the farmer. So where does the 66% go, you may ask? Now the middlemen, who have a large degree of political clout, tend to swindle 66% of the earnings of the farmer through the consumer, and as an end result only 34% reaches the farmer. Now this has serious repercussions, such as plunging the farmer into debt, causing the farmers to take their own life, i.e. suicides of farmers on a large scale, and the entire system of agriculture getting into a mess. Now, what is the gain for the middlemen? So very aptly said, gain for the middlemen are stones for the farmer. What this translates into as per a quantitative figure is, middlemen have knocked off 20 lakh crores of money which is supposed to reach the farmer from the consumer. So would you call this fair business? I would say not. Now let's understand how the how the middleman is able to exploit the farmer to such an extent. There is something called the market yards. Like for example, our market yard is at Yeshwantpur in Bangalore. Now there is an act called as the Agricultural Produce Market Act, or the APMC, which is mandatory by the government. So under the APMC Act, a farmer is supposed to engage a middleman and sell his produce to the final consumer through that middleman. So there are a whole chain of middlemen, about 8 to 10 middlemen who operate with a profit margin of about 30% to themselves. Now another very practical example is, let us consider the onion prices. See, the farmer gets 5 rupees per kg, whilst in the market it is sold for 30 rupees per kg. So what happens is, as with onions or the other vegetables, they perish soon and have to be sold. And the farmer can sell only to a particular middleman, because if he goes to another middleman, they may not extend to him the line of credit that his assigned middleman is extending to him. So what is the way out of this is, scrap the APMC Act altogether. The APMC Act is passed in 1954. Also there was something called as the Model APMC Act introduced in 2003. Now the Model APMC Act, which was introduced in 2003, allowed the farmer to interact and sell his produce directly to the consumer. But then, however, agriculture is a state subject, and many states have not bothered to implement it. They also do not want the Model Act to go into practice, because this eliminates middlemen, and the government would not want middlemen to be taken out of the picture. So again, a little more insight into the Model Act of 2003. It empowers something called as contract farming. See, now what contract farming is the entrepreneurs deal directly with farmers and provide them technological input. So the farmers get a lot of technological inputs from the entrepreneurs. An example of this is, the government of Andhra Pradesh has set up something called as the Raitu Bazaar in specific places, where farmers can sell directly to the consumers and eliminate middlemen. Also, care must be taken to eliminate interstate barriers and ensure movement of agricultural produce. A corporate example is the Imperial Tobacco Company, or ITC as it's shortly called, has established the e-Chowpal in nearly 9 states across 4 million farmers. So what the ITC's e-Chowpal initiative enables a farmer to do is, go onto the internet to the local farmers market, find out the prevailing rates for produce in the market on that particular day, and enables the farmer to sell his produce at the most remunerative price to the consumer. Also, the produce can get sold to malls and others as well. Another initiative that could be taken is providing cold chain storage facilities. Now, as we're aware, many of the farmers grow perishable produce like tomatoes, potatoes, carrots and the like. So from the time the produce leaves the farmer's place of production, goes in transit and reaches the ultimate place of distribution where the consumer can purchase it, there is a lot of spoilage that takes place. So by providing cold chain storage facilities, refrigerated trucks to ensure that there is reduction of spoilage when the produce is in transit from the place of production to the place of ultimate sale and distribution. Now the Bhabha Atomic Research Center has made remarkable insights in this matter. They have used gamma radiation in order to preserve and increase the shelf life of perishable produce like onions, for example. Also, there is an organization in Chandigarh, namely the CSIO, which has used high voltage electricity to try and sterilize milk, as opposed to pasteurizing the milk, which is a bulky and lengthy process. So all our agricultural universities have been doing wonderful work in this regard as well. But now the question is, can the farmers actually approach these organizations, seek their help, Like for instance, the Baba Atomic Research Center says it can use gamma radiation and improve the shelf life of vegetables. Can these small-time farmers really do that? So it makes more sense for the governments and the banks to step in and provide a whole lot of initiatives to these farmers. Like for example, cold chain storage facilities, as I had mentioned earlier, should be installed by the government in various locations to increase the shelf life of vegetables, preserve vegetables and farm produce, and ensure greater longevity of the produce. Also, food processing units can be established by governmental organizations. Now, these are just few of the initiatives that can be undertaken. Now, what are some of the things that banks can do? Banks can provide loans based upon the strength of the stored crops. Now, let me just break it down into a layman's parlance. Farmers cultivate a whole variety of crops: rice, ragi, wheat, jowar, so on and so forth. And when these crops are cultivated, they are stored in grain silos before they are ultimately taken to the marketplace for sale. So banks can provide loans to the farmers based on the strength of their stored crops. So this enables the farmer to meet his expenses in the time before the agricultural produce is actually sold in the open market. And it also becomes very important to abolish taxes and duties. Now, another thing that can be done is, many a time pests like the rodents, bugs, weevils are known for destroying crops, and this greatly affects the farmer. Now, whilst this is relatively a new area, insurance companies, the insurance bigwigs like the Life Insurance Corporation of India, for example, can look at crop insurance as a new method of providing insurance. Crop insurance would not contribute to a large extent to the insurance premia that they collect, but it also is important to understand that it becomes a viable source of insurance premia if undertaken and installed over a period of time. Then contract farming must be undertaken, wherein the entrepreneurs must be persuaded to enter into certain agreements to buy back and sell the crops under their names in local supermarkets. Interstate barriers for movement of agricultural produce must be removed. SARC must be persuaded to remove interstate barriers and stabilize the movement of food grains. This in turn will stabilize food prices. Now let us remember for a moment that China has only half the land, cultivable land, that India has, but produces 2 times as much agricultural produce as India does. In light of all these viewpoints, we need a second green revolution of sorts. Consists of improved production of pulses, improved production of vegetables, improved production of all agricultural produce, utilization of methods of rain harvesting, cold chain storage, and the like. However, though these help us obtain food security, the means are not missing, but the political will to do so is missing.